Heads up, this video will contain spoilers for the Somnium Files and its sequel, Nirvana Initiative. It also won't be the most positive video, as I do have a lot of negative things to say here. Keep in mind though, everything I say is my opinion and mine alone. If either of those factors will bother you, then I suggest clicking off of this video. But without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So, let's talk about Saito. If you are watching this video, I assume you've played the Somnium Files, but in case you just don't care about spoilers or don't intend to play the game, allow me to do a quick explanation as to who this is and who this is. The Somnium Files follows a detective named Kaname Date as he unravels a series of murders through the use of the sync machine, a complex device that allows his consciousness to enter the dreams of a subject. This process is called a sync, and allows for the main mechanic of the game, Somnium. Somnium is the dream world that Date is able to explore by guiding his AI companion, Aiba. However, when in Somnium, a syncer is only able to be there for 6 minutes, and anything past that is unsafe. The reason it's unsafe is that, as time goes on, the consciousness of the syncer overtakes the consciousness of the subject, and they, in a manner of speaking, swap bodies. Unbeknownst to our protagonist, Date, who lost his memories 6 years before the events of the game, he's actually in someone else's body without even knowing it. That person is Saito Tsujima, who has been hopping between bodies and committing murders. He ends up in Date's original body, which looks like this, and Date is in Saito's body. So why is Saito a serial killer? It actually started back when he was young, in his own body. Saito Tsujima has a disorder that renders his brain unable to secrete oxytocin, which, for him, makes it so that he only gets pleasure from killing. That should be it, an explanation for why he does the things he does. In actuality, no. Let's quickly look up what having an oxytocin deficiency does, and So, not having enough oxytocin, like Saito does, leads to autism and depressive symptoms. Nothing about having an oxytocin deficiency could possibly suggest why Saito only gets pleasure from killing. That's just not what the disorder is. In fact, Saito being this way is incredibly harmful to autistic people, of which I am one of. This trait of Saito makes it appear as though people with autism spectrum disorder, from not secreting enough oxytocin, might have a higher chance of being serial killers. It's hard for me to explain quite how much this frustrates me, both on the fact that the reasoning he's a killer doesn't make sense, and the fact that the reason they do give is directly harmful to those with autism. It creates a negative stigma around this disorder that, in reality, won't make someone more likely to be a killer, but just different. It's already hard enough being autistic and being unable to fit in or communicate properly with other people, but the idea that autistic people are likely to be killers just makes it so much worse. Does this mean I think the game was written maliciously, with the intent to harm people who are different and have autism? Not at all. In fact, here's what I believe the writers were attempting to go for. Saito, in his body, has an oxytocin deficiency in his brain, making him a killer. Date, when in Saito's body, isn't a killer. Why is that? He is being medicated and surrounded by people who really care for him. I believe that the game was trying to say that, even if you have a disorder like autism, that being in the right space with the right people and controlling it is what's most important. However, that's not really how it came across. The characterization of Saito feels more like, if you're not on meds and don't have a bunch of friends, then you're wrong and probably a killer. When that's not the case at all. Many people choose not to medicate for a multitude of reasons, and there isn't anything wrong with it. Making friends as an autistic person can also be incredibly difficult. So why should people who fit into those categories be brought down and degraded by the game for the sake of uplifting those who are doing what the game deems as right? It's just never sat well with me, and I'm not exactly a fan of that aspect of Saito. That's talking about Saito as an idea though. Let's talk about how he actually is as a character, which, in my opinion, is also incredibly weak. Saito is just simply a serial killer. That's about it. There's almost no depth to his character, and he's just evil for the sake of being evil. Saito isn't an empathetic or morally gray antagonist, which I believe Uchikoshi typically does exceptionally well. He's just a killer. Me, personally, I like antagonists that feel like human beings with their own ideals, dreams, and plans. They might stop at nothing to achieve their goal, which sometimes might be against the protagonist, or in some cases even turn out to be for the greater good. Even if there aren't any major redeeming qualities about them, though, I at the very least like an interesting backstory and motive, which Saito also doesn't have. His motive, well, he just wants the dopamine from killing. In the sequel to the Somnium Files, the killer was kidnapped when he was a young boy and forced into believing a secret society's beliefs, which ended up changing him permanently. He was made to stay in a damp, musty basement, and his whole life he wanted nothing more than to impress his kidnappers. Is he nearly irredeemable? Yes. Does he have an interesting backstory and motive? I would certainly say he does. His situation puts him in a bit of a spot where he doesn't really have any other choice but to do the best to help his kidnappers. Then, in fact, he is dead for half of the game's runtime, meaning he's even pulling strings from beyond the grave. He's an incredibly tragic character, but also a fascinating one that I love thinking about. Saito isn't that. Saito just, to me, feels like a heartless killer. He was born with a disorder that made him the way he is. It's not really anything that had to do with his character, just his physical body and being in an unfortunate circumstance, which I personally don't find very interesting. I've seen some people suggest that he's just meant to be over-the-top evil, like a Saturday morning cartoon. Maybe that would be okay if this wasn't an Uchikoshi game. I get that it's great to experiment with different types of stories and characters, but I just don't feel like this type of villain fits a game like the Somnium Files. Uchikoshi is known for having incredibly intricate and unique plots, with antagonists that blur the line between moral and immoral. They're gray areas that exist in their own space. Saito doesn't fit into that idea. He's just purely evil, and that just isn't very compelling to me. When I experience a piece of fiction, I look for very specific criteria. For me to really, truly love something, it doesn't need to make me cry. It doesn't need to make me laugh. What it needs is to make me think. If something can make me ponder about it, and if it just gets stuck in my head because of that, then it's something I love. This usually happens when something's actually worth thinking about. Of course, for me, Saito is such a simple and bland character that there isn't much for me to think about with him, and I often end up forgetting he exists. To me, there just isn't a level of depth that there is with nearly every other character, so Saito just ends up feeling like half of an idea that could never get fully developed. On top of that, he's killed at the end of the game, leaving no room for redemption or personal self-reflection in him. It would be great if he could come to terms with his disorder and find ways to live with it without having to take the lives of others, but that just isn't possible. The chance of his character developing into something more was taken away, removing any hope there could possibly be for a more well-rounded and human character. That's why I feel so negative about him. There's no chance for him to be better. Even if the game ended without Saito changing, but remaining alive, there's still a chance he could develop off-screen in an interpretive ending that allows room for the player to imagine what an ideal ending could be. However, that's not how it is. Saito is an open and shut case, with no chance for a retrial. Hey, I know this video was shorter and a lot more negative than usual, but thank you for listening to me ramble about this. I still like the Somnium files, don't get me wrong. I just wanted to talk about this specific aspect that never resonated with me. I'm going to be doing more video essay style videos, so if you enjoy those, consider subscribing. I've been Nikoa, and I hope to see you next time.